Imagine standing in a field in southern Italy. It's August 2nd, 216 BC. The ground beneath your feet is trembling, not from an earthquake, from 87,000 men marching toward their fate. You're a Roman legionary. You've trained your entire life for this moment. Your armor gleams, your gladius is sharp. You stand in the largest army Rome has ever assembled, 8 full legions, 80,000 warriors strong. And by sunset today, 50,000 of you will be dead. This isn't a battle, it's an execution. And the executioner? A one-eyed Carthaginian general who's about to teach Rome a lesson so brutal, so humiliating, that military academies will still be studying it 2,200 years later. Welcome to Cannae, the perfect killing ground, the deadliest single day in military history until the Somme. The day one man's genius turned war into art, and 50,000 Romans into corpses. But here's the twist that makes this story legendary. Rome lost, and then refused to surrender. Instead, they turned this catastrophic defeat into the fuel that built an empire. This is the story of how to lose everything and still win. This is the Battle of Cannae. To understand how Rome walked into the most perfect trap in military history, we need to rewind 2 years. It's 218 BC. Hannibal Barca, 26 years old, burning with hatred for Rome, does the impossible. He marches 40,000 men and 37 war elephants across the Alps. Half his army freezes or falls to their deaths. Romans laugh at the news. They stop laughing when Hannibal wins his first battle, then his second, then his third. For 2 years, Hannibal has been carving through Italy like a knife through flesh, burning farms, liberating Rome's allies, making the superpower of the Mediterranean look weak. Rome in 216 BC, the city is seething. Mothers weep for dead sons, politicians scream in the forum, the people demand revenge, the Senate demands blood, and they have a plan. They're going to raise the largest army in Roman history, double the normal size, 80,000 infantry, 6,000 cavalry, led not by one, but 2 consuls, dual commanders for a force too massive for one man to lead. The Roman mindset. Here's what you need to understand about Rome in this moment. They're not just confident, they're arrogant. They've been winning for 200 years. They've conquered Italy, they've beaten Carthage before. They look at Hannibal's 50,000 troops and think, we have 80,000. Math says we win. But Hannibal isn't thinking about math. He's thinking about psychology, about terrain, about turning Rome's greatest strength, their massive disciplined infantry, into a death trap. Every great battle is the story about people, so let's meet the men who will write this bloody chapter in history. Hannibal Barca, the architect of annihilation. Born in Carthage, raised to hate Rome. At 9 years old, his father made him swear an oath on a burning altar, I will never be a friend to Rome. And Hannibal kept that promise. By 216 BC, he's 30 years old and missing an eye, lost to infection while marching through Italian swamps. But the eye he has left, it sees things other generals can't. He studies terrain like a poet reads verse. He understands human nature. He knows that courage without strategy is just organized suicide, and he's about to prove it. His situation. Hannibal is outnumbered. He's deep in enemy territory. His supplies are running low. By every logical measure, he should retreat. But Hannibal doesn't think logically. He thinks artistically. He looks at the Roman army and sees a weapon he can use against itself. All he needs is the right battlefield. The commoner who climbed to consul. The man who promised the people he'd end this war in one battle. Aggressive, impatient, hungry for glory. On August 2nd, it's his day to command. The aristocrat, the veteran, the one who survived Hannibal's ambush at Trasimene. He knows what Hannibal can do. He urges caution. But on August 2nd, he's not in command. He can only watch. The tragedy, here's the heartbreaking part. Paulus knows it's a trap. He argues against fighting on this ground. He pleads with Varro to wait, to choose better terrain. Varro ignores him. The people want battle. Glory waits for no man. And so 80,000 Romans march toward a small town of Cannae, where grain supplies sit in warehouses, where the ground is flat and perfect for their massive infantry, and where Hannibal is waiting with a smile. Location matters in real estate, in life, and especially in war. And Hannibal has chosen this battlefield like a surgeon chooses where to cut. The terrain, Cannae, a dusty plain in southern Italy, flat, open, the kind of ground that Rome's massive infantry can deploy in their famous checkerboard formation. Perfect, right? Wrong. Look closer. To the south, the Ophidius River blocks Roman retreat. Wind direction, southeast, blowing dust into Roman faces. Deployment space, narrow, forces Romans to pack tight. Hannibal hasn't just picked the battlefield, he's picked a killing floor. On the morning of August 2nd, as the sun rises hot and merciless, 87,000 men stand facing each other across a field that will soon run red with blood. And then the order comes. The first move happens on the wings. Hannibal's Spanish and Gallic cavalry, heavier, better trained, smash into the Roman cavalry on the left flank. It's not even close. The Roman horsemen, used to infantry support, are isolated and overwhelmed. Within minutes, they're routed, fleeing, broken. On the right flank, Numidian light cavalry skirmish with Roman allied cavalry. No decisive victory, just enough to keep them busy, locked in place. The result? In the first 15 minutes of battle, Rome loses air superiority. Their cavalry, their eyes, their mobility are gone. The Romans barely notice it. Their infantry is already charging. Now comes the moment Hannibal has orchestrated, the moment every Roman general is praying for. 80,000 Roman legionaries advance. Disciplined, relentless, a human tidal wave of armor, shields, and stabbing swords. They hit Hannibal's crescent center like a hammer hitting clay. And the Gauls start to break. From a Roman soldier's perspective, you're pushing forward, you're winning, the enemy is retreating. You step over bodies, enemy bodies. Your centurion is shouting encouragement. The line ahead is crumbling. You push deeper and deeper. The Carthaginian center bends backward. The crescent inverts. Now it's curving away from you like a bow being drawn. Victory is meters away. You can taste it. From Hannibal's perspective, he stands on a hill watching his center buckle exactly as planned. Officers look at him nervously. Should we reinforce? No, Hannibal says. Let them come. The Gauls are dying, hundreds of them, but they're dying slowly, fighting, retreating, drawing the Romans deeper into the pocket.
The critical moment. The Roman infantry is now completely committed. They're packed so tightly in pursuit that they can barely swing their swords. They're bunched, compressed, suffocating in their own numbers. And that's when Hannibal springs the trap. Remember those African veterans on the flanks? The elite troops hidden at the edges? Hannibal gives the signal. They turn inward and attack. Music shifts. Dread. Doom. The Romans, obsessed with chasing the center, suddenly feel steel biting into their flanks from both sides. Confusion spreads like poison. We're being attacked from the side. Reform the line. But there's no room to reform. They're too compressed, too deep. Men in the back are pushing forward, not knowing that the men at the front are being slaughtered. And then Hannibal's cavalry, having destroyed the Roman horsemen, circles around behind the entire Roman army. The trap is complete. The double envelopment. It's called the double envelopment. Military historians consider it the most perfect tactical maneuver in history. The Romans are now surrounded, completely. Front, flanks, rear, all sealed. 80,000 men trapped in a shrinking pocket of death. What happens next isn't a battle. It's butchery. Imagine being in the center of that Roman formation. You can't move, can't fight effectively, can't retreat. Men are pressed so tightly against you that when they die, they don't fall. They're held upright by the crush of bodies. The sun beats down. Dust chokes your lungs. Blood makes the ground slick. And from every direction, enemy spears and swords find flesh. The killing goes on for hours. Romans die standing up, crushed against their own comrades. Some suffocate in the press of bodies before a blade ever touches them. By sunset, 50,000 Romans dead. 4,500 Roman cavalry dead. Consul Paulus dead, killed fighting in the ranks, refusing to flee. 10,000 Romans captured. Hannibal's losses? About 6,000. Ancient historians describe the field after Cannae, so many bodies that you couldn't see the ground. Rivers running red for days. Hannibal's soldiers collecting gold rings from dead Roman senators. They fill multiple bushels. One senator's son finds his father's body and weeps over it. Varro, the consul who demanded this battle, he survives. He flees with 70 cavalry. The superpower of the Mediterranean has been humiliated. Rome has lost an entire generation of fighting men in a single afternoon. So Hannibal has done it. He's achieved tactical perfection. He's destroyed Rome's army. He stands in Italy with nobody left to stop him. Rome is 250 miles away, nearly defenseless. His officers beg him, "March on Rome, end this war, finish them." And Hannibal says, no. This decision has haunted historians for 2,000 years. Why didn't Hannibal march on Rome? His cavalry commander, Hannibal, allegedly said, "You know how to win a battle, Hannibal, but you don't know how to use your victory." The reasons: siege warfare. Rome's walls were massive. Hannibal had no siege equipment. He could surround the city, but taking it? That could take years. Manpower. He lost 6,000 men at Cannae. He was still outnumbered in Italy overall. The Roman psychology. And this is the key. Hannibal understood tactics perfectly, but he misunderstood Roman culture. Because here's what happened in Rome when news of Cannae arrived. The city went into mourning. Every family lost someone. The Senate met in emergency session, but they didn't discuss surrender. They discussed recruitment. The Senate passed emergency measures. All men 17 or older, drafted. Freed 8,000 slaves to fight, promising them freedom. Bought weapons from temples. Refused to ransom prisoners, even when Hannibal offered. Sent a message to Varro, "Thank you for not despairing of the Republic." Read that again. They thanked the general who led 50,000 men to slaughter for not despairing of the Republic. The Roman mindset. This is what Hannibal didn't understand. Rome didn't fight wars like other nations. For Carthage, war was about economics, about trade routes and profit. For Rome, war was about existence, about honor. Romans would rather die to the last citizen than accept humiliation. The strategy shift. Rome appointed Fabius Maximus, the delayer, to supreme command. His strategy? Never fight Hannibal in open battle again. Shadow him, harass him, cut his supply lines, starve him, bleed him. It was unglamorous. It was unheroic. It worked. The long defeat. For 13 more years, Hannibal wandered Italy, winning small battles, losing allies, slowly starving. Rome rebuilt, 4 more legions, then 6, then 8, and then they did something brilliant. They ignored Hannibal and attacked Carthage directly. In 202 BC, at the Battle of Zama in North Africa, a Roman general named Scipio, who'd studied Cannae, who'd learned from Rome's defeat, used Hannibal's own tactics against him. Hannibal was finally beaten. So what do we take from Cannae? Why does this battle matter 2,200 years later? The tactical lessons. Military academies from West Point to Sandhurst still teach Cannae. Why? The double envelopment, used by Stonewall Jackson at Chancellorsville, attempted by Schlieffen in First World War, studied by Patton in Second World War, executed by Schwarzkopf in Desert Storm. Every military officer knows this battle. They study the terrain selection, the use of weak centers as bait, the importance of cavalry, the timing of the flanking attack. Hannibal wrote the textbook. Everyone else has just taken notes. The psychological lessons, but the deeper lesson isn't about tactics. It's about resilience. Hannibal's victory. Hannibal won the perfect battle, tactically flawless, historically unmatched, and he still lost the war. Why? Because victory without strategic follow-through is just impressive violence. Rome's defeat. Rome lost 50,000 men, a quarter of their military-age male population, the worst single-day death toll in Western military history until World War I. And they won the war. Why? Because they refused to let defeat define them. The empire built on failure. Here's the beautiful irony. Cannae didn't destroy Rome. It forged Rome. The generation that survived Cannae became the generation that conquered the Mediterranean. They learned from humiliation. They adapted. They endured. 20 years after Cannae, Rome controlled Spain. 40 years later, they burned Carthage to the ground and salted the earth so nothing would ever grow there again. The empire that would rule the known world for 500 years was born from the ashes of its greatest defeat. So here we are, 2,200 years later, standing on the other side of history, looking back at a dusty field in Italy where 50,000 men died in a single afternoon. What does Cannae teach us? For leaders, genius isn't enough. Hannibal had it. He won the perfect battle and lost everything. Strategy without endgame is just tactics. Victory without vision is just violence. For the defeated, losing doesn't mean you're finished. Rome lost their largest army, their best general, their sense of invincibility. They buried their dead, recruited more soldiers, and got back to work. The ultimate lesson? It's not about the single battle. It's about the war. It's about what you do after you've lost everything. Do you surrender or do you rebuild? Rome chose rebuilding, and that choice changed history. On that field at Cannae, Hannibal proved he was the greatest tactical genius of his age. But Rome proved something more powerful, that resilience beats genius, that persistence beats perfection, that the only way to truly lose is to surrender, and Rome never surrendered. The Battle of Cannae, Rome's greatest defeat, and the foundation of their greatest triumph. If you learned something from this story, hit that subscribe button. History isn't just about the past. It's about the lessons that echo through time. And if there's one lesson worth echoing, it's this. Defeat is an event. Giving up is a choice. Rome refused to choose it, and that made all the difference.